you'll be shocked. Any questions on JFK? Because the famous Shane O'Sullivan wants his film up there.
When you say it was important to get it going, go through the pantry, have you considered the possibility that there were assassination teams at every other entrance, or exit, I should say? Why does it have to be just we know from the John Kennedy assassination that there were other teams. Had he lived through Dealey Plaza or something went wrong there, would he picked up somewhere else? If Sirhan was sick that day, I'm sure there was a second man that would have been the patsy. I mean, they weren't going to count on Sirhan being there for Kennedy. They obviously made a decision if he won the primary, he was getting killed.
Instead of going through all that, it's so much easier. Just get him in New York. If this doesn't work, get him in New York, get him in Chicago, get him wherever. It's really hard to assassinate someone in such a professional manner. Once you start having 3 or 4 different ways and this and that.
Why?
Well, because you need a fall guy. Sirhan can't be in 6 places at one time.
You have. I'm sure there were other people in the wings. I have 2 other guys. One's here, one's there. The 4th guy here. They're not limited.
Well, they worked on Sirhan for a long time.
Have you considered this possible? I'm not
No,
saying that's what happened.
no,
but
never.
okay.
But I'll keep it in the back. I'll keep it in the back of mind because I don't know everything. But this is a very intricate assassination. You want to make sure this works.
Right. So you don't just count on one location.
Well, yeah.
But if Kennedy says, no, I'd rather go this way.
Get him in New York City when he's walking through a restaurant over there. You don't have to kill him that night. You just got to kill him before he's president.
Well, I think it was important to kill him that night once he won the primary.
Well, we'll see.
Protection might have increased.
Lisa.
With Jerry Bruno, were you able to meet any family members, friends? Have you tried to see if you had money problems? If there was something there, was there a way for somebody, a reason for somebody to get to him, perhaps tax issues? I mean, seriously, that's how people get office.
Well, if he's with trying to kill JFK on that in '63, I think he didn't really like the Kennedys as much as he might have professed.
Well, I feel the same about Walter Sheridan. I mean, I think I think any political candidate with power is going to have people in their camp who are not there for the best interest. I'm just saying, if he was a loyalist, this would be a horrible smear. You have some provocative evidence. I was just wondering if you found any other.
I got one Jerry Bruno tape that I did order, and there's a lot of jealousy in him about Jack Kennedy and about Jack Kennedy treating him in a demeaning way. So yeah.
There's this new book, JFK and the Unspeakable: Why He Died and Why It Matters by James Douglas, and I'm only on page 56, so I can't really speak about the book as a whole, but I'm profoundly moved by it. It's beautiful, and it's focusing on the reasons why President Kennedy was murdered that I've always thought were the real reasons, having to do not with casinos in Cuba, but with Bell Helicopter and McDonnell Douglas and petroleum companies and the billions that were made in Vietnam and the wars that followed. The goddamn question. Oh yes, this is the question I wanted to ask you. I have thought several times of sending this book to Senator Obama. I just read Joe Trento's book from about 3 years ago called Prelude to Terror, where he talks all about how Jimmy Carter was set up by the Reagan people and Robert McFarlane and the Bush people, rather, to get knocked out of office by this Iran business. Yeah. Is there a way to communicate to Obama that what he must do is not only keep track of these people, but penetrate their organization and get ahead of them?
Let's see if Lisa Peace follows what I'm going to say.
I've worked on 2 presidential campaigns, and I can say no, not a chance in hell, because they are so busy. I mean, they get up at 4 and they go to bed at 2 a.m. He will not read a book. He will not. His advisors will have time to read a book. I'm sorry. I was working directly with Howard Dean. I literally handed him my book, and I'm sure he didn't read it. To this day, he probably hasn't read it, because now he's head of the DNC.
You think they appoint one person to keep the person alive?
Yeah. Let me go out on a limb and look like a real fool in 6 months, okay? A real fool. I see these Manchurian candidates continue. Stearns is the first. The guy who's shooting George Wallace, he has the same 6 smile that Sirhan has. Shooting John Lennon, and then going after Reagan. A guy named Fenton Bressler has a great book called Who Shot John Lennon. I don't know if you knew it, but it really parallels a lot of MK Ultra stuff. Then Reagan, is it unbelievable that David Rockefeller and the economic elite want Bush to be president, and he's not going to get it? You get Reagan's people say, hey, put him in vice president. Then you shoot him 3 months later, and George Bush becomes president? Is that unbelievable? Not to me, not from what I know.
That's why Hillary can't be vice president.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, that's on my list. The same people that I think who want Hillary.
The CIA is all over her campaign. They're so
Okay.
overtly, Larry
Yeah.
Johnson, yeah.
So,
In any sense, he gets Cynthia McKinney.
yeah, that'd be great. If
What do you say?
if
In any sense, he'd get Cynthia McKinney as a running mate.
if he picks Hillary and he gets shot 3 months after inauguration, remember I said it, okay?
It's not good.
Yeah, but okay, that's all I have to say. Any more questions or yeah? Yeah.
I spoke to Paul Schrey just a little earlier. I don't know if he's, excuse me. I don't know if he's still in here. If I understood, I asked him about how it was decided they go out through the pantry. And if I understood him correctly, I thought he said Mankiewicz, and I forget the name of the other guy. Mankiewicz, and the other guy, some other guy, made the decision. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm in contact with Mankiewicz. I asked him because I need to find out who those people are in the back.
Yeah.
He wrote to me and I can't remember what he said, but it wasn't that though. It was he said only two people are going to make that decision, him or maybe Fred Dutton, and he didn't make the decision.
And
Okay.
I thought maybe it was Fred Dutton was the other guy who. Have you talked to Fred Dutton then?
Fred, he's died, and I tried contacting his kids, and they won't give me time of day.
Oh,
But remember, Fred's a soldier. He's not one of the advancement. He's the guy. He's the guy who's going to be out there with Kennedy and walk him in. Someone like me, if I'm the advancement, I'm going to say, walk him in, and this is where he's going to give the speech.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well.
Lisa.
Wait, it's just gonna say, I did read somewhere that it was Bobby himself who chose to go speak to the print press because the TV and the radio people had all the glory, filming him, and they were kind of off and shut it, and that he had done that at other events. So I don't know, but I did also read the Fred Dutton thing. I personally found that persuasive, but I'm very curious about your evidence. So, it's like I said.
Well, here's the problem, Lisa. You can't leave it to chance. This guy's got to be killed in a pantry. What are you going to do? Set it all up and then let's find out what happens? No.
Well,
So it has to come off. So Fred Dutton, you can't rely on Fred Dutton to come up with a genius idea.
well, no, what I'm saying is that Bobby had planned all along to go talk to the press. That was not changed. After that, he was going to go downstairs, speak to the overflow, and then head to the party.
That's why we need to talk to the advancement, all including Jeff Greenfield, and find out. Here's the key. What was decided on June 3rd on what Bobby was going to do on June 4th? If you tell me what happened on June 3rd and who made up what Kennedy's going to do on June 4th, and if it's going back into the pantry, that's our guy.
Right.
It's not-
Ed Guthman lives locally. Have you ever talked to him? Because he was there with him that night, and he was in the inner circle.
I didn't, but I want to talk to I'm going to try to put some pressure on Paul to get me Lester, because Lester's younger. Lester was there, his son.
And Lester might remember more.
Yeah. And you know how kids see everything when they're young,
Yeah, well, I have Guthman's contact info if you need
All right,
it.
you can email me. Want to reach
Yeah.
Oh, Summer. Where's
Does anyone have more questions?
I was gonna say, you should probably remember though, that I think it probably was Bobby's idea to go talk to the press, but he didn't need to go through the pantry to get to the press.
Actually, that's not true. There's only two ways there, and one, because I've been there, I've walked the thing, and I've seen the maps. He either had to go through the really big crowd to get there, or he had to go through the kitchen and go around and still hit the big crowd to get to, or he could go through the pantry. So it actually did make sense to go through the pantry. It would have looked like the safest route, not knowing.
And Lisa, were you in the
Yeah.
were you in the pantry before it got destroyed?
Yes, I was, and not long before it was destroyed.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it impossible for this man to look at me, and he's Juan Romero, and he not see the guy shoot Kennedy? Isn't that not impossible? This is how far they were.
You know what I'm going to answer to that is there's a video on YouTube, and I gotta find it and post. I'll give it to John to post. And what it does is it shows two teams playing basketball. It says count the number of passes from the white team, between the white team members. And you're watching. At the end of the video, it doesn't ask you how many passes there were. It says, did you see the man in the gorilla suit walk through the game? And you're like, what?
And then I watched it again, and it's very obvious. There's a man in a gorilla suit who walks right through.
That's a nice intellectual exercise.
No, but what I'm saying is that if you're focused on one thing, something else really big could be happening right next to you. You will not see it. Juan Romero was so enamored of Bobby Kennedy. When he saw him, that was his sole focus. I mean, the world could have been falling off a cliff behind him, and he wouldn't have seen it. That's all I'm saying.
But right now, I see the guy to your left, and I see a girl in a black dress.
Right, that's because
But I'm
you're not
looking at you.
focused on me. No,
No, I am focused on you. I am focused on you. I'm just saying, I was there, and I'm saying impossible for these 3 people not to see the shooter, impossible for the 4 people not to see the
Yeah,
shooter.
but they were doing it yesterday, you know, and if
Stand up for a
I'm
second,
back
hold on.
here
Yeah,
and holding like this, and I take the gun like this,
Yeah.
anybody see me shooting
Yeah,
him? That's what they
exactly.
were saying.
If you're talking,
He's
and
over
if
here.
he's here and I'm here, and I don't know if Caesar was left-handed or right-handed, to be honest, but if he's here, you're talking to this guy.
This guy
Now
sees you
remember-
right there.
Hold on, hold on.
This
You're Juan Romero, you're a little far, but you're Juan Romero,
He's
hold
Juan
on.
Romero.
No, hold on. This is Bobby Kennedy, you're Juan Romero, you're actually right about here. All right, but he turns away from you and he starts to move. I'm literally here, you can't see me, I can't see you right now. This is where it happens, right after Kennedy turned sideways to Juan, so he wouldn't have seen it. That's all I'm saying. He had shook his hand, he turned to move forward, he had his side to Juan Romero, and this side was hidden from Juan. By the way, Juan was the only guy who said he saw the shooter, and he wouldn't identify it as Sirhan. Yeah.
What does that tell you?
Yeah.
Proves your point. Thank you.